Let's choose hairstyle. What? Okay. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. How are you this fine day? The PTR is up and has been up for a few days now. With it, we have hands-on on the Zandalari trolls and Kul'Tiran humans, the new allied races to come in patch 8.1.5. If you haven't checked it yet, and also as a disclaimer for this video, the PTR is currently very buggy. Some racials don't work, allied races start without being able to mount or learn riding skills, so it suffices to say this looks like an alpha for a patch. Definitely not a beta. Now I know why they didn't add everything yet. But we will talk today about what has been added, and in the future I will update you guys with every new thing that comes on a PTR, so make sure you stay subscribed and like the video if you like it. For now, the biggest thing is the allied races, and off the bat we see bugs in the character selection screen. This happens at least for male trolls. In terms of actual customization, there isn't much to talk about for the Zandalari trolls. We have what we pretty much expected. The hairdos, the tusks and stuff. I have to say, as a general impression, that I like how they look. For my personal preferences, the dark spear trolls are just too skinny, but hey, I like my boys beefy. The female Zandalari are actually cool in their customization. Aside the standard stuff, we have tattoos, which are becoming increasingly popular in latest editions. But also, my personal favorite, the accessories, most of them inspired by real-life traditional blings. I am still on the fence with Zandalari paladins, but hey, call me old-fashioned. I was willing to go as far as accepting blood elves as paladins, and after Tauren paladins, I thought we could stop there. It just seems Blizzard is trying to make other races paladins and trying so hard to make them make sense. It's hard to argue with them on this topic because they are building their own world and they can make it work, but I digress. Also, a few mentions about the Kul'Tiran humans and their customization. First and foremost, where's the skinny model, man? Are we getting the thick model only? I mean, I thought that after 14 years we can finally choose for our casters to not be looking like they lift more than orcs. I'm not sure if they plan to add the skinny model, but I sure hope so. Why wouldn't they though? I feel like this is a general thought in regards to a lot of changes that have been happening in this expansion. Other than that, the male version seems to have some options missing, and I hope this is the case. The female is interesting. A new look and feel for characters, and we can actually make them old now. Finally! Speaking of customization, we also have the heritage armor data mined. We pretty much knew by now what it would look like, but it's still nice to see different styles of clothing, at least when it comes to the Kul'Tiran humans. Now let's check the racials. Their current numbers are subject to change. The Zandalari racials are essentially so strong that it kind of makes them the strongest race in the game in this current iteration. And since the numbers will be changed in the future, I will just go over the main effects. Starting with the trolls. We have City of Gold, a passive increase in gold gain by 2% when looting creatures. The 2% is interesting. It adds to the theme of the Golden City, as the name suggests. Pterodac's Swoop is an active ability that gives you a glide effect for 2 minutes. It feels like the Slow Fall Levitate spell, but the gliding distance is higher and reminds me of the Goblin Glider effect. It has a long cooldown though, which makes it more of a flavor spell than an actually utility spell. The next ability is probably the strongest racial Blizzard ever made, and that is Regenerated. On a very short cooldown of 1.5 minutes, the trait heals you for 25% of your total health every second for 4 seconds, essentially healing you for full. The first hotfix this has received is that it can be interrupted by taking damage, although they mentioned this was always the intention. A 4 seconds 100% HP heal is still insane in both PvE and PvP, And even if you can only channel it for, let's say, 2 seconds, it's still amazing. The spell is so good that there's really no reason not to switch to Zandalari, whatever you do. I don't want this to be nerfed, and here's my thought on this type of mechanic. I like it being strong. It adds more flavor to the race and makes it more impactful to play Zandalari trolls. But I want other ratios to be like this. Of course, this won't happen. But when interesting spells begin to be nerfed into normality, then all we have is average stuff. But hey, a nerd can dream, right? It definitely cannot stay like this with no changes whatsoever, but I just feel like Blizzard will make it heal something like 20% HP for 4 seconds, which will make it very meh. The last racial, which also needs tweaking, is Embrace the Loa. This is probably the coolest thing the Zandalari have, simply for the flavor and fantasy of it. You can essentially choose a personal aura type buff depending on what you need. You have Embrace of Akunda, your healing abilities have a chance to heal the target for a decent amount, but the proc chance seems to be incredibly low. I'm not sure if it's a bug or not, but I couldn't get it to proc in over 20 casts, which for a healer is dog shit. So much RNG makes it unmanageable and sometimes can essentially overheal. I would much more like it to increase our healing by something like 2 to 3% or more. Or give it some management, like every 5th healing spell it procs for X additional healing. Stop giving us RNG abilities, for the love of God. The next buff is Embrace of Buon Samdi, which gives your damaging abilities a chance to deal extra shadow damage and heal you for 100% of the amount. It could be that the heal will reflect the shadow damage number, or that plus the ability damage that procced it. It's a decent buff. Again, it's hard to judge the number since we don't know the proc rate and some of them don't even work for us to test it. Embrace of Gonk is the next one, and this is a simple 5% movement speed buff. Embrace of Kimball is another ability that seems really strong. You essentially have a chance to apply a strong bleed on the target for 6 seconds. For me, it says it deals 12k damage over 6 seconds and can stack 3 times. The Kragwa buff is a tanking buff that gives you a bunch of HP and armor when you take damage, again with a chance to proc that is unknown. The numbers seem pretty high, even as I see them on my Resto Shaman. And the last one is Embrace of Paku, which might need to be rephrased. The tooltip says that your abilities have a chance to give you 5% critical strike for until cancelled. What does this mean? 5% crit chance for one ability? 5% crit until you switch the Loa? Guess we'll have to see. This is everything so far, and I doubt they will add anything more. Unless they plan on removing a trait and adding another one in its place. Moving to the Kul'Tiran humans, let's start with the boring ones and make our way up. Rime of the Ancient Mariner is as standard as can be. 1% frost and nature damage reduction as a passive. Jack of all trades is also a cool, flavorish, albeit boring passive. You get essentially +5 to all trade skills, professions to be exact. Child of the Sea is a 50% extra breath duration underwater and a 10% swim speed. It makes sense, but to be honest, most of the time you're underwater you either have a mount, and the quest itself gives you some form of breathing air, so not so sure how much this will impact you. But hey, nice touch I suppose. Plus the naming is nice. Brush It Off is another passive that was buggy on the PTR. It essentially gives you 1% versatility, which is nice. Versatility is one of the stats that scales the slowest, so 1% versatility might be on the lines of 2 to 3% mastery crits and so on. The other effect is the interesting one, which is the heal you get. Essentially, you are healed for 2% of the damage you take over 4 seconds. Since it doesn't proc on PTR, I don't know if this stacks, or has a chance to proc, or works like the Brewmaster's stagger mechanic. Last and probably the most interesting trait is Haymaker, which is kind of like Moradin's ability from HOTS. You punch your target for some damage, stun them for 3 seconds, and knock them back significantly. The ability has a 1 second cast time and a 6-yard range, so it's interesting to see how it will work. I can see this in PvP being really cool as an escape tool. The 3-second stun is interesting, but the ability is on a 2.5 minute cooldown, so you can't really rely on it more than, say, War Stomp from Torrents. With the current state of PvE, I can't see it being used that often. In Mythics, you don't really want to punch mobs away from fear of pulling more shit. It could be a good saving grace if you need an interrupt, or maybe fighting a big bolstered target. So far so good. Aside a few data mined quests that involve player choice in the campaign, which I won't go into to avoid spoilers, not much is happening on the PTR, but we will keep you guys updated. Stay subscribed for more videos, and if you want to support us even more, we have a Patreon page with some goodies. Love you all and see you in the next one.